Welcome to the urinary system, the anatomy and physiology for therapists, for complementary therapists. Today we are going to be looking at the structure, the function and the key processes of the renal system, also known as the urinary system that we have here. The urinary system is responsible for removing waste and excess substances from the blood. So let's begin, shall we? So the function of the urinary system or the renal system is that it is responsible for removing the waste and the excess substances from the blood. So the regularity functions of blood volume, blood pressure, electrolytes, and the pH of our system. So quite a few things that are quite important to our body working in an optimum manner. Over time, if these things are not working properly, they can have severe consequences. But if something starts going slightly wrong with the urinary system, it tends to show up in really subtle ways. And it's not until it's been going on for a long time that actually everything starts to fail. The major organs include the kidneys, the urethra, the bladder, and the ureters. So let's have a look at the structures. The major organs, like I said, we've got the kidneys, and the kidneys are what filter the blood to produce the urine that we excrete through our body, through the urethra, from the bladder to the urethra, out into the toilet or wherever we may be excreting that urine. The ureter is the tubes that transport the urine from the kidneys to the bladder. The bladder is where we store the urine, and the urethra is where we excrete urine outside the body. Shown in this beautiful image here. On your handout that you should have printed off, you can see that we've got a picture of that system. And what I'd like you to do is to label it. So use the labels to write down where the vena cava is, the aorta is, the renal artery, the renal vein, the kidney, ureter, the urinary bladder, and the urethra. You can colour in if you want to, but the main purpose is to try and get you understanding whereabouts in the body that these things are. Now, if we look in a little bit detail, the nephron is a functional unit of the kidneys. So the kidneys are like bean-shaped organs located retroperitoneally, and they filter blood about 50 gallons a day. That's a huge amount of filtering that they do. And this helps to regulate electrolytes, the pH, and the blood pressure. So if we look at the kidney, this shows one nephron. Let me actually picture the correct bit that I'm pointing at. So this is the whole kidney. And you see from here, we've got the cortex, the medulla, the calyx, the renal capsule, and then you can see that we have the urethra that goes down. We've got the artery, we've got the vein. So we've got one on one side of our body, and we've got another on the other side of our body. So we have two, and so there are two areas of problems that can occur and pain that can occur if there are problems. And it's amazing because actually, if one person has to have a kidney removed, the other kidney just takes on that extra responsibility, so actually you can survive very well with just one kidney. I think it's really important to bear in mind that because you only have one kidney, that we should be a little bit more sensitive to the things that we eat and drink, and definitely we aid our body with a bit more flushing out. It is the ureters that carry the urine to the bladder via peristalsis, where the bladder stores the urine, holds about 400 to 600 millilitres, and the urethra eliminates urine, which differs in the male and female anatomy, as we know. About 180 litres of filtrate are processed daily, but only 1.5 are excreted. So the nephron, this area here, is the functional unit of the kidney that is located primarily in the medulla here. and the cortex region here. Each kidney contains over 1 million of these. So we have 2 million nephrons in our body, which just sounds blows my mind. But considering we have to filter 50 gallons a day, that makes sense that we have so many of these nephrons. So the nephron is made up of the Bowman's capsule, which is here. That collects the filtrate from the glomerulus. The proximal tubule is it reabsorbs the water, the ions, and the nutrients. And we have, so that's here, that's here, and that's the convoluted tubule here and here. We've got the loop of Henle, which quite handily is where we see the loop. And this concentrates that urine by reabsorbing water and salt. The distal tubule, which is here, selective secretion of absorption, and then the collecting duct is down here. So you have the Bowman's capsule here, it goes through the proximal tubule, it goes down the loop of Henle, it reaches the distal tubule, and then it goes down the collecting tubule, where it channels the urine to the renal pelvis and adjusts the water absorption. Now here you see the cortical nephron, which occurs in the cortex, and in the medulla, that is the medullary nephron. Very, very similar. Very, very similar. It's just that this happens in the medulla and this happens in the cortex. That's the only difference, but they are all linked in one-to-one. So all of these little branches all have these nephrons attached to it. Does that make sense? So you don't just have like one of the Bowman's capsule attached to it, you'll have many branching off from the collecting duct. I think that's all I need to talk about. So simply put, the filtration occurs at the glomerulus here in the Bowman's capsule. The reabsorption occurs in the proximal tube. The secretion occurs at the distal tubule, which is here and here, and the excretion occurs through the ureter and the urethra. So as part of the anatomy and physiology, one of the standards that we have to meet is that you have to know what the urine composition is. So urine is the end product of filtration, reabsorption and secretion in the kidneys. Normal urine is sterile with a light yellow colour from urochrome pigment, and abnormal components can be really indicative of pathology and may warrant further medical testing. So bacteria would mean that a patient has a UTI and need antibiotics. It's really important that we ask our clients how their water is, and if they are having any pain or having any problems with excreting urine, then we need to really try and figure out whether we need to be trying to get them to go to a doctor to see what is going on and to have that urine tested. So normal urine has 95% water, has a little bit of urea, it has creatinine, and then it has electrolytes that are no longer needed, like sodium, potassium, and chlorine. If we look at the abnormal urine, if there is a high amount of glucose, it can suggest that there's diabetes. If there is a high amount of protein, there could be some kind of kidney damage going on. If there is blood within the urine, that tends to show an infection or there's been trauma. And if there's ketones within the urine, that's where there is starvation occurring or a problem with the diabetes at the other end of this. So instead of having high glucose, high ketones are shown. And then the other abnormal thing is if there's any bacteria, that's when it's a UTI and that's when antibiotics are required. When there is a high amount of protein, that's when further investigation for the kidney is required. It can be, this damage can be sorted out, but it can be that the damage is going to be there forever, and therefore things like trying to figure out how They can get the kidneys working again using dialysis and possibly even having to have a transplant. Blood, when there's an infection or trauma, that tends to be, really looking at what else is occurring within the body. And so a whole body analysis is really required. Sometimes GP surgeries, that is enough to figure it out, but otherwise, sometimes it does mean hospital admission to see if there's any further things that need to be explored to see what is going on. And the diabetes, again, that is something that can be managed at the GP surgery. But being able to talk about urine and being able to recognise when something is not right is really good. It's also really good for you to look at what your urine's like and how you can improve it. When you go to the toilet during the day, is it smelly? Is it very colourful? All of these things indicate that you need more water or that the kidneys require more help. Okay. There are some common pathologies that we look at when, these are the common ones that come to us when we are a therapist. So it's always a really good idea to observe for signs and symptoms during consultation. Pathologies can range from temporary infections to chronic diseases, and understanding these help provide appropriate support and know when to refer clients to medical professionals. It's also a great way of really honing in what we want to do on their treatments. Where do we want to focus on? So one of the first ones is the urinary tract infection. That's a UTI, and that's caused by a bacterial infection. The symptoms include burning urination, urgency, cloudy urine, and we can really support their bladder, their kidney, the urethra, and lymphatic drainage during the complementary therapy. Kidney stones. The cause is a mineral crystallization due to really concentrated urine. Severe back pain, nausea, and blood in urine are the symptoms for kidney stones. Again, we can support that urinary system, the bladder, the kidney, the urethra, help with lymphatic drainage, look at the back and pelvis. There's hydration education. Chronic kidney disease. This is long-term damage from diabetes and from hypertension, and it can cause, the symptoms include fatigue, swelling, and poor appetite. The areas that we would really try and work on are the bladder, the kidney, the urethra, lymphatic drainage, and I would say that GP consent is kind of essential for this. And then we have incontinence and cystitis. Incontinence is a loss of bladder control, stress or urge type, and cystitis is inflammation of the bladder, often linked to infection or irritation. And again, we can really support those areas by concentrating on the bladder, on the kidney, on the lymphatic drainage. Red flags that must be referred immediately: blood in urine, severe or persistent pain in the lower back, unexplained swelling in your legs, fever with UTI systems. They must go to their GP, if not go to A&E. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this. Remember to work on those worksheets, work on those workbooks, and I will mark them when I see you next.